Elvis Presley was halfway through Unchained Melody during his final rehearsal when he suddenly stopped singing. The band fell silent. His backup singers froze. For 15 seconds, that felt like an eternity, Elvis just stood there staring at something nobody else could see. Then he said 7 words that made everyone in that room realize they were witnessing something they'd never forget. This is the story of Elvis's last rehearsal, and the moment that still haunts everyone who was there. It was June 19th, 1977. The location was the Jungle Room at Graceland, the famous home studio where Elvis had recorded some of his final albums. The room was packed with his touring band, backup singers, and a handful of trusted crew members. They were preparing for what was supposed to be Elvis's comeback tour, a series of dates that would prove to the world that the King still had it. Elvis had been struggling. Everyone knew it, even if nobody wanted to say it out loud. The once lean, electrifying performer had gained weight. His jumpsuit had to be let out multiple times. There were rumors about prescription medications, about health issues, about a man who was burning out from decades of non-stop performing. But when Elvis showed up to rehearsal that morning, there was something different in his eyes, a clarity, an intensity that his band hadn't seen in months. They started with some of the up-tempo numbers, CC Rider, Burning Love, songs that got the energy flowing. Elvis moved around the room, joking with the musicians, slipping into old impersonations that had everyone laughing. For a moment, it felt like the old days, like maybe all the worrying had been for nothing. Maybe Elvis really was back. Then they got to Unchained Melody. The song wasn't originally part of Elvis's regular set list. It had been recorded by the Righteous Brothers and became one of the most romantic ballads of all time. But Elvis had started performing it in recent concerts, usually sitting at the piano pouring everything he had into those aching lyrics about longing and lost time. The audiences loved it. It became a moment in his shows where the arena would go completely silent, thousands of people holding their breath as Elvis sang about lonely rivers and waiting arms. Elvis sat down at the piano. His fingers found the opening chords. The room settled into that respectful quiet that musicians give when something sacred is about to happen. Elvis closed his eyes and began to sing. His voice was beautiful. Raspy, yes, worn from years of use, definitely. But there was an emotional depth to it that hit everyone in that room right in the chest. He sang about lonely rivers flowing to the sea, about time going by so slowly. His piano playing was simple but effective, each chord landing with quiet power. Then he got to the line, "I need your love," and that's when it happened. Elvis's hands stopped moving. The piano went silent. His voice cut off mid-phrase, hanging in the air like a question nobody knew how to answer. The band, confused, stopped playing one by one. First the drums, then the bass, then the guitars. Within seconds, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the amplifiers. Elvis sat frozen at the piano bench, his hands hovering above the keys. His eyes were open now, but he wasn't looking at the piano or the sheet music. He was staring straight ahead at the far wall of the Jungle Room. But it was clear he wasn't seeing the wall. He was seeing something else. Somewhere else. Charlie Hodge, one of Elvis's closest friends and his onstage guitar player, took a step forward. "Elvis, you okay, man?" His voice was gentle, careful, the way you'd talk to someone who just woke up from a nightmare. Elvis didn't respond, didn't even blink, just kept staring. Kathy Westmoreland, one of the backup singers who'd been with Elvis for years, felt her throat tighten. She'd seen Elvis in all kinds of states over the years, but this was different. There was something about the complete stillness of him that felt wrong, like watching someone slip underwater. Joe Guercio, the musical director, checked his watch out of habit. 15 seconds had passed. It felt like 15 minutes. He opened his mouth to say something, anything to break the spell, when Elvis finally moved. He stood up slowly from the piano bench, not rushed, not dramatic, just a man standing up like he'd made a decision. He turned to face the room full of musicians and crew members who'd been with him through everything. His eyes moved from face to face, really looking at each person, memorizing them. Then Elvis spoke. 7 words. Quiet, but clear enough that everyone heard them. "I'm not gonna make it this time." The room went cold. Nobody moved. Nobody knew what to say. Because those 7 words carried weight that went beyond the surface. This wasn't Elvis being dramatic or fishing for reassurance. This was a man stating a fact he'd somehow come to know. James Burton, Elvis's lead guitarist and the guy who didn't rattle easily, felt his hands go numb. He'd played with legends. He'd seen everything the music business could throw at you. But the look on Elvis's face right then, the calm certainty in those words, made his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" Joe Guercio finally asked, his conductor's baton still raised from the last note they'd played. "You're not gonna make what?" Elvis smiled. It was a sad smile, the kind that breaks your heart because you can see the person behind it has already accepted something terrible. "This tour, these shows, I can feel it, Joe. Something's different this time." Kathy stepped closer, her eyes already filling with tears. "Elvis, come on, you're just tired. We can take a break, reschedule some dates if you need to rest." Elvis shook his head slowly. "It's not about rest. I've been tired before. This is something else." He looked down at his hands like they belonged to someone else. You ever have that feeling like you're watching your own life from somewhere outside yourself? Like you're already gone and you're just seeing the end play out. The room was silent except for the soft sound of Kathy crying. Even the tough guys, the veteran musicians who'd been through it all, were struggling to keep it together. Charlie Hodge walked over and put his hand on Elvis's shoulder. "Boss, you're freaking everybody out here. Talk to us. What's going on?" Elvis took a breath and looked around the room again. When he spoke, his voice was steady but soft. "I had a dream last night. My mama came to visit me. She looked just like she did before she got sick. Young and beautiful. She was standing at the end of a long hallway, and she was smiling. She said, 'It's almost time, baby. You've done good. You made me proud. But it's almost time to come home.'" Several people in the room had heard Elvis talk about his mother before. Gladys Presley had died in 1958, and Elvis never really got over it. He talked to her picture, visited her grave regularly, swore he could feel her presence sometimes. But the way he was talking now, it wasn't grief or longing. It was something closer to acceptance. "When I woke up this morning," Elvis continued, "I knew what that dream meant. I've known it all day. That's why I wanted to do this rehearsal. I wanted to sing with you all one more time. Really sing. Not for cameras or audiences or album sales. Just us. Just the music." Joe Guercio lowered his baton slowly, his professional composure cracking. "Elvis, man, you can't talk like that. You're gonna be fine. We've got the best doctors, the best Joe." Elvis cut him off gently but firmly. "We both know that's not true. The pills aren't helping anymore. The weight, the blood pressure, the everything. I'm not trying to be morbid here. I'm trying to be honest. For once in my life, I'm just being honest." He walked back to the piano and sat down again. His fingers found the keys, playing a few soft chords. "You know what the funny thing is? I'm not scared. I thought I would be, but I'm not. I've been so tired for so long, tired of the expectations, tired of being Elvis Presley. I just want to rest. I want to see my mama again." The room was absolutely still. Nobody knew what to say to that. How do you respond when someone you love tells you they're ready to stop fighting? Elvis played a few more chords, then looked up at the band. "Can we try that again? Unchained melody. I want to get it right. For me." Slowly, hesitantly, the musicians picked up their instruments. The backup singers moved back into position. Joe raised his baton with a shaking hand, and Elvis began to sing again. This time it was different. Every word carried the weight of goodbye. When he sang, "I Need Your Love," his voice broke with real longing. When he got to "Godspeed Your Love to Me," it sounded like a prayer. His hands moved over the piano keys with a tenderness that made it clear he was saying farewell to something he loved. The band played through tears. Kathy and the other backup singers could barely hold their harmonies together. Even the sound engineer in the booth had to wipe his eyes to see the mixing board clearly. When Elvis finished the song, he held the final chord for a long time, letting it ring out until it faded into silence. Then he stood up from the piano and turned to face everyone. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything. For all these years, you've been more than a band, more than employees. You've been family. And whatever happens next, I want you to know that these moments, right here, this is what I'll remember. Not the stadiums or the gold records. This, making music with people I love." He started toward the door, then paused and looked back one more time. "One more thing. When it happens, don't be sad, okay? Don't spend years beating yourselves up wondering if you could have done something different. You couldn't have. This is just how my story ends, and that's okay." Then Elvis Presley walked out of the Jungle Room, leaving behind a room full of people who didn't know whether they'd just witnessed a breakdown or a prophecy. The rehearsal broke up shortly after. Nobody had the heart to keep playing. Joe Guercio dismissed everyone early, and they left Graceland in stunned silence. Some of them talked about it in hushed conversations over the next few days. Most kept it to themselves, not sure what to make of what they'd heard. 2 months later, on August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley was found dead in his bathroom at Graceland. He was 42 years old. The official cause was cardiac arrhythmia brought on by years of prescription drug use and declining health. But everyone who'd been in that rehearsal room on June 19th knew the truth. Elvis had seen it coming. He'd tried to tell them. In the years since, most of those musicians and singers have passed away themselves. But before they did, a few of them finally talked about that last rehearsal. They talked about how Elvis seemed at peace, how he'd looked each of them in the eye like he was saying goodbye, how he'd poured everything he had left into that final performance of Unchained Melody. Charlie Hodge, in an interview he gave shortly before his death in 2006, put it this way: "People always ask me about the last time I saw Elvis. They want to know if he seemed sick or if there were signs. And I always tell them about that rehearsal. Because that's when I knew. That's when we all knew. Elvis wasn't sick that day. He was ready. And sometimes when someone's truly ready to go, there's nothing anyone can do to stop it." Joe Guercio, who went on to conduct for other major artists, said he never heard anyone sing Unchained Melody the way Elvis did that day. "It was like he was singing from the other side already," Joe said. "Like he'd already made the crossing and was just letting us hear what it sounded like." The recording equipment was running during that rehearsal. The tapes exist somewhere in the Graceland archives, but they've never been released to the public. Some say it's because the Elvis estate doesn't want to exploit such a raw, personal moment. Others say it's because listening to it is too painful, too much like eavesdropping on a man's final goodbye. But everyone who was there that day carries it with them. The memory of Elvis sitting at that piano, singing about lonely rivers and time going slowly, then stopping mid-song to stare at something nobody else could see. The memory of him standing up and saying those 7 words that nobody wanted to believe: "I'm not going to make it this time." Elvis Presley died 2 months after that rehearsal, but in many ways, he said goodbye that day in the Jungle Room. He told his musical family that he loved them. He sang his heart out one last time, and he tried to prepare them for what was coming, even though nobody wanted to hear it. Sometimes, the hardest goodbyes are the ones we see coming, the ones where we have time to say all the things we want to say, but still somehow aren't ready when the moment finally arrives. That's what happened in that rehearsal room. Elvis gave them a gift, the gift of goodbye. But it was a gift wrapped in heartbreak. And to this day, nobody who was there can listen to Unchained Melody without remembering the moment Elvis Presley stopped singing and stared at something only he could see. The moment he knew, the moment he tried to tell them. The last rehearsal.